There is a saying in physics that the universe is not only stranger than we suppose, but it is stranger than we can suppose. We build our models, we write our equations on chalkboards, and we convince ourselves that we have mapped the architecture of reality. We believe that if we know the mass of an object and the force of gravity, we can predict the future. But every once in a while, the universe throws a variable into the equation that doesn't just break the model, it shatters the chalkboard. For the past few months, the eyes of the scientific world have been locked on the interstellar object known as 3IATLAS. We argued over its trajectory. We debated its composition. We wondered if it was a comet, an asteroid, or perhaps a remnant of a destroyed planet. But while we were arguing about the rock, we missed the shadow hiding behind it. What I am about to share with you is information that is currently causing a level of panic within the corridors of NASA and the European Space Agency that hasn't been seen since the Apollo 13 crisis. But this is not a panic about a malfunctioning oxygen tank. It is a panic about a malfunctioning paradigm. 48 hours ago, the Deep Space Network, the massive array of antennas responsible for tracking spacecraft at the edge of the solar system, detected an anomaly. They weren't looking for it. They were conducting a routine telemetry sweep of 3IATLAS, measuring its Doppler shift to refine its orbit. The data came back corrupted, or at least that's what the technicians thought. The signal was dirty. It had a ghost echo. A secondary frequency was overlapping the return ping. When they recalibrated the dishes at Goldstone and Canberra to isolate the noise, the room went silent. The ghost echo wasn't noise, it was mass. There was a second object. For weeks, we believed 3IATLAS was traveling alone. It is a massive cigar-shaped object similar to Oumuamua, but much larger, tumbling through the void. But now, the high-resolution radar imaging has revealed that it is not alone. Hovering in its wake, tucked perfectly into its gravitational blind spot, is a second structure. We are calling it Object Beta. And the existence of Object Beta violates everything we know about celestial mechanics. You see, in space, two objects cannot simply fly in formation that close together without interacting. Gravity is a relentless force. If Object Beta were a moon, it would be orbiting Atlas. If it were a piece of debris, it would be drifting away or crashing into it. But Object Beta is doing neither. It is station keeping. This is a term we use in orbital mechanics for satellites that use thrusters to maintain a precise position relative to the Earth. To see a natural object station keeping relative to an interstellar asteroid is impossible. It would require a constant micromanaged application of thrust to counteract the gravitational pull and the solar wind. A rock cannot do that. A chunk of ice cannot do that. Only a machine can do that. And this is why the lights at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory have not been turned off in 2 days. They are scrambling because they have realized that we have been analyzing the wrong thing. 3IATLAS might not be the ship, it might be the carrier, and Object Beta might be the cargo. Let me break down why this specific configuration is keeping physicists awake at night. We have a concept called the Roche Limit. This is the distance within which a celestial body, held together only by its own gravity, will disintegrate due to a second celestial body's tidal forces that exceed the first body's gravitational self-attraction. Inside the Roche Limit, moons are torn apart and become rings. Object Beta is sitting well inside the theoretical Roche Limit of Atlas. By all laws of Newtonian physics, the gravity of the larger object should be ripping the smaller object into dust. The fact that Object Beta remains intact tells us one of two things. Either it is made of a material with a tensile strength that exceeds anything found in nature, something like carbon nanotubes or a diamond nanorod lattice, or it is generating a field to neutralize the tidal forces. Both possibilities point to the same conclusion: artificiality. Nature builds with rock and ice, which crumble. Nature does not build with hyperalloys that laugh at gravity. The images coming from the new telescopic arrays are grainy, but they are telling a terrifying story. 3IATLAS is dark, tumbling, and jagged. But Object Beta is different. It is not tumbling. It is tidally locked. facing Atlas with a fixed orientation, and it is smooth. The radar cross-section indicates a high metal content reflecting radio waves with the intensity of a mirror. But the most disturbing detail is its size. It is small, perhaps only 30 meters across, compared to the kilometers-wide bulk of Atlas. In the animal kingdom, when you see a massive creature accompanied by a small, agile one, you are usually looking at a symbiotic relationship, or you are looking at a pilot fish swimming next to a shark. The question is, what is the function of the pilot fish? The scramble at NASA began when Object Beta moved. Until yesterday, it was hiding in the shadow. But as 3IATLAS approached the perihelion, its closest point to the Sun, Object Beta broke formation. It didn't drift. It executed a maneuver. It accelerated out from behind the main body and positioned itself between Atlas and the Sun. Imagine you are walking in the desert, and suddenly your backpack detaches itself, flies in front of you, and opens an umbrella to shade you. That is essentially what just happened. Object Beta deployed a structure. We observed a sudden expansion in its surface area. It unfurled a shield. This changes the entire narrative. We previously thought the lack of a coma or tail on Atlas was because it was a dead rock. Now, we have to consider the possibility that it is being protected. Object Beta appears to be an active defense system. It is blocking the solar wind. It is shielding the main body from the intense radiation of the Sun. Why would a rock need a sunshade? It wouldn't, but a cryogenic storage unit would. A sleeping ship containing biological samples would. A computer core operating at near absolute zero would. The implications of this are staggering. We are currently a Type 0.7 civilization. We struggle to protect our astronauts from radiation just a few hundred miles above the Earth. We are looking at a civilization that has automated the protection of a massive vessel using autonomous drones. This is Type 2 technology. It implies a mastery of energy and materials that makes our space shuttle look like a canoe carved out of a log. And NASA knows this. That is why the live feeds from the ISS were cut. That is why the public data release from the James Webb Telescope has been delayed for calibration. They are trying to verify what they are seeing because once they say it out loud, there is no going back. If they admit that there is a secondary object performing autonomous maneuvers, they are admitting that we are not alone. They are admitting that the solar system has been breached. But the story gets stranger. As Object Beta positioned itself to shield Atlas, the main object reacted. For the first time since we detected it, 3IATLAS slowed down. Conservation of momentum dictates that if you separate two objects, their velocities change. But this wasn't a simple separation. The deceleration was sharp, controlled, and perfectly timed with the deployment of the shield. It was a braking maneuver. They are preparing for something. You do not deploy a heat shield and hit the brakes unless you are planning to stay or unless you are planning to open a door. We are watching a cosmic docking procedure, or perhaps a refueling operation, happening right in our backyard. And we are watching it with the helpless fascination of ants watching a tank roll over their hill. The scramble is not just about observation anymore. It is about security. Because if Object Beta can block the Sun, what else can it block? If it can manipulate gravity to hold its position, can it turn that weapon toward us? We have spent 50 years listening for a radio signal. We thought contact would be a mathematical equation. We never expected it to be a traffic maneuver. The maneuver executed by Object Beta, this pilot fish deploying a shield, triggered a cascade of alarms across the global defense networks. You have to understand that the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, tracks everything in orbit, from the International Space Station down to a lost screw from a satellite. They have a catalog of tens of thousands of objects. But when Object Beta moved, it didn't just change its position, it changed its classification. It went from debris to bogey. A bogey is a military term for an unidentified aircraft that displays hostile or intelligent intent. And make no mistake, in the eyes of the military generals sitting in the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, an object that can accelerate without exhaust and deploy a shield is a potential threat. NASA is scrambling because the science has suddenly turned into national security. If this object has propulsion, it has a weapon. In physics, there is no difference between a spaceship and a missile. It is only a matter of vector and intent. An object moving at 20 miles per second carries more kinetic energy than a tactical nuclear weapon. If object beta were to nudge 3IATLAS, or if it were to detach and head towards Earth, we would have zero defense. We cannot shoot it down. Our fastest interceptors are like tortoises trying to catch a falcon. This power imbalance is causing a quiet, terrifying realization among the world leaders. We are not sovereign in our own solar system anymore. But while the generals are worrying about kinetic impacts, the physicists are looking at something even more baffling: the energy signature. When Object Beta deployed its shield, the sensors on the Parker Solar Probe, which is currently skimming the outer atmosphere of the Sun, picked up a burst of radiation. But it wasn't heat and it wasn't light. It was a coherent beam of neutrinos. Neutrinos are ghostly particles that pass through almost everything. Billions of them are passing through your thumb right now. They are incredibly hard to detect and even harder to generate in a focused beam. We produce them in nuclear reactors, but they scatter in all directions. The beam from Object Beta was a laser of neutrinos, and it wasn't pointed at the Earth, it was pointed directly at the Sun. Why would an alien probe shoot a neutrino beam at a star? This brings us to the realm of Type II civilization engineering, specifically stellar lifting or star hacking. We have theorized that an advanced civilization could use a star not just as a heat source, but as a router. A star is a massive ball of plasma with a complex magnetic field. If you hit it with the right frequency of particles, you might be able to stimulate a reaction. You could trigger a flare to use as a signal flare, or more terrifyingly, you could be tapping into the star's magnetic field to recharge your batteries. We might be witnessing Object Beta plugging itself into the wall socket of our solar system. It is refueling. This hypothesis gained weight when 6 hours after the neutrino burst, the Sun responded. A coronal mass ejection, CME, erupted from the exact spot where the beam had aimed. But this CME was strange. It was magnetic, but low in mass. It washed over 3IATLAS and Object Beta, bathing them in high-energy plasma. Instead of being pushed away or damaged, the objects glowed. The shield on Object Beta absorbed the plasma. The albedo, brightness of the object jumped by 400%. It was drinking the storm. This confirms a suspicion I have held for years regarding the Fermi paradox. We assume aliens would land on the White House lawn. But why would they? We don't stop to talk to the worms when we are drilling for oil. We just take the oil. 3IATLAS and its drone are not here for us. They are here for the Sun. We are just the indigenous wildlife living near the gas station. This realization is humbling, but it is also dangerous. If they are harvesting solar energy, they might not care if their operations disrupt our satellite networks or our climate. We are collateral damage in a galactic pit stop. NASA is currently trying to coordinate a desperate mission. The James Webb Space Telescope is being retasked. Normally, you have to apply months in advance to use the Webb. Right now, every other observation has been canceled. They are pointing the most powerful eye in history at Object Beta. They want to see the shield. They want to see the mechanism. The leaked preliminary reports suggest that the shield is not solid. It is a smart cloud. It appears to be made of billions of nanobots swarming in a magnetic lattice. This allows it to change shape, to become opaque or transparent instantly. It is programmable matter. If this is true, it means Object Beta is not just a tugboat. It is a factory. A von Neumann probe is a machine designed to replicate itself. It lands in a system, mines the asteroids, builds copies of itself, and moves on. If Object Beta is a swarm of nanobots, it could consume 3IATLAS, the raw material, and turn it into 1,000 more probes. We might be watching the reproduction cycle of a mechanical species, and the gestation period is terrifyingly short. The scramble at NASA also involves a cover-up of the data coming from the Voyager probes. Voyager 1 and 2 are at the edge of the solar system in interstellar space. We have received reports that Voyager 1 has detected a carrier wave, a low-frequency hum that permeates the background of the local void. It started the moment Object Beta woke up. This suggests a network. 3IATLAS is not a lonely wanderer. It is a node. It has connected to the interstellar Wi-Fi. It is reporting its status. Arrived at System Sol, commencing refuel. Local inhabitants primitive. Proceeding with protocol. What is the protocol? That is the question haunting the Situation Room. Is the protocol just exploration, or is it preparation? Yesterday, amateur astronomers in Chile noticed something that the professionals tried to hide. 3IATLAS is changing color. It was dark red, typical of tholins, organic compounds, found in the outer solar system. Now the sections exposed by the shifting shield of object beta are turning metallic silver. The nanobots are stripping the hull. They are cleaning the ship. Why do you clean a ship? You clean it before you open the airlocks. You clean it to ensure that no contaminants get in or out. This suggests that something is about to deploy from the main body. The panic is exacerbated by the fact that we are blind to the internal structure. Ground-penetrating radar bounces off the hull. We can't see inside, but the mass readings are fluctuating. This violates the laws of physics unless mass is being converted into energy at a rate that rivals a matter-antimatter reactor. 3IATLAS is waking up from a deep hibernation. The scramble is a race against time. NASA wants to send a probe to intercept it, a high-speed kinetic impactor, basically a camera attached to a missile, to fly by and get a close look before it leaves, or before it does something worse. But the orbital dynamics are brutal. To catch an object moving that fast would require a launch window that opens in 3 days. If we miss it, we miss the chance to see the face of the architect. And amidst all this, the silence from the object is the loudest sound in the room. It hasn't hailed us. It hasn't acknowledged our radio pings. It acts with the supreme indifference of a god. This indifference is frightening because it implies we are not a threat nor an asset. We are irrelevant. But history teaches us that when a technologically superior civilization arrives, the irrelevant natives often suffer the most. We are standing on the beach, watching the tall ships anchor in the bay, wondering if they bring trade or disease. The latest telemetry shows object beta is rotating. It is aiming a new instrument at Earth. Not a weapon, hopefully, but a sensor. It is scanning the biosphere. Specifically, it is scanning the oceans. The neutrino beam that hit the sun is now being modulated to sweep across our Pacific Ocean. Is it looking for water, deuterium, or is it looking for the heat signatures of our submerged nuclear submarines? The military fears the latter. They think it's mapping our defenses. I think it's checking the water quality. To a galactic traveler, a planet with liquid water is a gas station with a convenience store. You check if the water is clean before you pump it. We are witnessing the collision of human ego with cosmic reality. We thought we were the center of the story. 3IATLAS has shown us that we are just background characters. The scramble at NASA is the frantic realization that the script is being rewritten and we don't know our lines. As the sun sets tonight, look at the sky. You won't see it with your naked eye, but it's there, a shadow and its pilot fish, drinking the fire of our sun, preparing for the next phase of a mission that began before humanity invented the wheel. The scan of the Pacific Ocean was the moment the scramble at NASA turned into paralysis. We watched the telemetry with bated breath, expecting a weapon discharge or a biological extraction. Instead, we witnessed a phenomenon that borders on magic. As object beta swept its sensors over the Mariana Trench, the deepest scar in the Earth's crust, the water temperature didn't rise, but the acoustic hydrophones placed on the ocean floor by the Navy went deaf. A sound, purely mechanical and incredibly loud, resonated through the water column. It wasn't a whale song. It was a frequency match. The probe was pinging the geology of the Earth. It was measuring the resonant frequency of our planet. In physics, if you find the resonant frequency of a wine glass, you can shatter it with your voice. If you find the resonant frequency of a planet, you can do much more than shatter it. You can use it as a gravitational anchor. We realized too late that the refueling operation wasn't just about solar energy, it was about momentum exchange. 3IATLAS was preparing to slingshot, but not around the sun. It was using the Earth's mass in a way we have only theorized about in papers regarding the Oberth effect on steroids. Object beta, having completed its scan, retracted its shield. The nanobot swarm that had formed the protective umbrella collapsed instantly, flowing back into the small silvery sphere like liquid mercury. It then turned and accelerated back towards the mothership. The docking was seamless. There was no mechanical clunk, no clamp. The two objects merged. The pilot fish returned to the shark, and the shark woke up. The scrambling at the space agency stopped because there was nothing left to do. We were no longer participants. We were spectators at a launch site. The combined entity of 3IATLAS began to glow. This time, it wasn't reflecting sunlight. The hull itself was ionizing. The space around the object began to distort. This is what we call gravitational lensing. The light from the stars behind the object was being bent into a halo. This confirms that the drive system of the craft manipulates the fabric of space-time itself. It is an Alcubierre drive, or something even more advanced. It doesn't move through space. It contracts the space in front of it and expands the space behind it. It rides a wave of distorted reality, and then it vanished. It didn't fly away. It didn't accelerate to light speed. It simply ceased to be there. One moment, radar showed a massive object near the sun. The next moment, the screen was empty. The vacuum rushed in to fill the void where it had been, creating a gravitational shock wave that rippled through the solar system. Comets changed their courses. The asteroid belt shifted slightly. The Earth wobbled on its axis by a fraction of a degree, just enough to require us to recalibrate our atomic clocks. They left a footprint in the gravity of our solar system, a permanent reminder that they were here. The immediate aftermath at NASA was a chaotic mix of denial and data hoarding. The official story being drafted right now is that 3IATLAS broke apart near the sun, disintegrated by the heat. They will say Object Beta was just a fragment breaking off. They will try to sell you the dust and gas narrative again, but they cannot explain the neutrino beam. They cannot explain the shield, and they cannot explain the gravity shockwave. The data is out there. Amateur astronomers saw the flash. The ham radio operators heard the scream of the solar atmosphere. The truth is leaking out faster than they can plug the holes. But what does this mean for us? What is the takeaway from this close encounter with a Type 2 civilization? It brings us to a sobering realization. We are not the main characters of the galaxy. We are living in a small house on the side of a superhighway. A convoy just pulled over, refueled, checked the tires, and drove off. They didn't knock on our door. They didn't ask for directions. They didn't care if their exhaust fumes rattled our windows. We are insignificant to them. This strikes a blow to our ego, but it is also a challenge to our potential. For thousands of years, we have fought over land, resources, and ideology. We have acted as if the Earth is the only stage that matters. 3IATLAS has shown us the backstage. It has shown us the machinery of the galaxy. We now know that interstellar travel is possible. We know that shielding against a star is possible. We know that gravity can be tamed. We have seen the technology of the gods. And now we have a choice. We can retreat into fear, bury our heads in the sand, and pretend it never happened. Or we can use this as a catalyst. We can study the data they left behind, the radiation signatures, the gravitational ripples. These are clues. They are crumbs dropped from the table of a giant. If we are smart, if we are united, we can reverse engineer the crumbs. We must transition from a Type 0 civilization to a Type 1 civilization. We must organize our planetary resources. We must stop the petty wars that drain our energy and focus on the physics of survival. Because 3IATLAS was just a scout. It was a traveler. But where there is one car on the highway, there are others. And the next one might not be just passing through. The next one might be looking for a place to stay. The universe has just given us a wake-up call. It rang the doorbell and walked away. We are left standing in the doorway, looking out into the dark, realizing that the neighborhood is much more crowded than we thought. The panic at NASA will fade. The headlines will change, but the reality has shifted forever. We know they are out there. We know they are watching. And now, thanks to the scans from Object Beta, they know exactly where we are. The silence of the cosmos has been broken, not by a greeting, but by the roar of an engine. And in that roar, we hear our own destiny calling. We must reach for the stars before the stars reach for us again. The scramble is over. The work has just begun. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep looking up, because the next time the sky changes, we need to be ready to meet it not with fear, but with understanding. We have seen the impossible, and now it is our job to make it possible.